Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Cyber Leaders Unplugged. I'm your host, Jax Scott, and if this is your first time here, welcome to the show. This is a mini series. We're on season 1, episode, I think this is 4, and we've got actually a couple more after this. But really quick, some admin things. I know that I was telling you all that in November, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. Well, that is still happening, so go me. However, what I've decided is due to my immense workload that has suddenly kicked off with Q4, after these next 2 episodes, it's going to be a mini episode and I'm going to balance my workload and not do the episode once I come back from my trip. So that is a change, but exciting news. I am planning to kick this off in season 2 in probably around like January, February in 2025. So it will still continue. I'm all about quality versus quantity. And when I start to feel kind of just burnt out or tired or overwhelmed, I realize it's time to kind of put the brakes on everything. So I love doing these episodes. I love meeting with these guests. And I just don't want to burn myself out. So I know you all can relate to that. So stay tuned for at least 2 more after this. But today, you guys are in for a real treat. We have an absolute powerhouse, like always, up in here. And this is actually a repeat offender. So you all may already know her, Tonia Dudley. And I'm excited because she has taken on and she's been working at, I think it's like, gosh, you correct me, Tonia, like 1 or 2 years as the executive advisor at IBM XForce Cyber Range, and we'll be talking about what that is and what she does there. And she essentially leads the cybersecurity program. She's also led some of the cybersecurity programs at other big name industry names that you've heard of, which is Cofense and Charles Schwab. She's been at the forefront of driving incident management strategies, which we will be diving into that, and has served on the board of leading cybersecurity organizations. One of those is the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Also, if some of you are familiar with WISIS, Women in Cybersecurity, she is also the co-president of the WISIS affiliate in Phoenix, Arizona, where she is originally from. But she's currently in Washington, D.C., so my old stomping grounds. She has got over 2 decades of experience in cybersecurity. She has a background and is very familiar with different types of audits and assessments. Some of those, if you're familiar with them, ISO 27001, and my dearest favorite, NIST, CSF. So I am excited. I am thrilled that she said she would come on the show and grace us with her presence. But really quick, before we jump in, I have to take a moment and again, thank all of the viewers that are making these live streams. I literally, I do this for you guys, and it warms my heart because I know we're all so busy all over the world, and I'm so grateful when you make the time to jump on these live streams. If you are new here and this is your first time coming to one of these shows at Outpost Gray, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and you would join this community. We're an inclusive and welcoming community. So without further ado, are you guys ready for this? Let's get Tonia on the stage.
Let's stick to the basics. We both know what we want. Let's just keep it simple.
Woo! Let's do it.
I feel like I should be dancing right now to DJ Mix Jax.
You know, I thought about being a DJ. I love how they can mix music. And there's this, I'll send it to you. There's this gal, I think she's like 12 or 13 years old, blow your socks off with her DJ capabilities. And she's just rocking it out in her house with probably a DJ set that's 2 times the size of my desk. So impressive.
Seriously.
I love it.
Right.
We don't have that type of music here, but we do what we can. Space Talk is already, go ahead.
Can we first talk about you're gonna hike Kilimanjaro? Like, okay, you didn't tell me that part. Like, so I met some ladies that were getting ready to do that when I first moved here, right, to the church I go to. And then I saw one of them like a couple weeks after she got back, and she had this like thing on her arm. I'm like, oh my gosh, did you get hurt? She goes, no, I got hit by a bike when I got back.
Oh my God, when she got back, right.
You made it all that way without any injuries, and then you get back and right. So anyways. That's
it's dangerous
really
out there in DC. You got to be, is that where she got hit, was in DC?
Yes. Yeah. Riding her bike. Right.
Oh, man. Oh man. Yeah, this has been a lifelong dream of mine. I actually had it all planned, and then the infamous COVID hit. And unfortunately, I'm one of those people. It's kind of my neurodivergent mind. When I have a trip planned, I also have other trips planned. So when that got canceled, I couldn't just move everything. I had to like do this trip and this trip. And it's finally cycled back around where I just was like, I just need to do it. Like sign it up, do it. And here I go. Woo! I'm leaving in a few weeks and I'm as ready as I'm going to be. So YOLO, I guess, right?
Right. How many days is it that you're going to actually be hiking?
6 to 7. So you have like ascent day, and I could stay a little bit longer to ascend. It's a whole, like there's all these different routes, but you can do it between 5 to 9. But the majority of people do 6 to 7 because the longer time that you have for acclimatizing, the more likely you are to ascend. And there's there's crazy story. Like I had a guy that just recently did it, and he told me one of the people on the trek with him had pneumonia, hiked it, started throwing up blood, and they heloed him out. So you hear these stories all the time. I don't think it's going to happen to me. I think it'll be fine. Yeah.
You're going to be great.
Yeah. I'm preparing it. So welcome. I'm so excited. Is this your second or third time? It's second, definitely second, but is this your third time?
I think it might be with the third, because I think the first time, remember, we met up at that little David Spark meetup, right?
Yep. And then I had you back on. Yeah. And then I met you the first time at RSA, and we didn't remember each other initially. Right. And then we had a David Sparks. For any of the Simply Cyber community that's in here, if you guys are watching if you guys go to Jerry's morning cyber threat brief, that is part of his cyber threat brief. So we were at a social event and we connected, and we were like, how do we know each other? And then boom, because we had met like 2 years prior. Yeah. In COVID and life. So it was wild. Yeah. But now you've been a CISO, like you've done a lot of different roles in the space, and now you're working at IBM. I would love for you to take a moment to share kind of your journey of how you got here and how you got to DC from Arizona and all the goods.
Yeah. How far back do you want me to go?
You don't have to go like to the beginning.
No.
Yeah.
I'll do an abbreviated, because as I do intros here, I kind of have to give a little bit of my experience.
Yeah. So highlight how you kind of broke into the executive realm. That would be awesome. Like how you started, and then how you started kind of reaching into the executive realm.
Okay. So I'm going to say early in my career, I did accounting roles, right? So, and that's important because that is what has helped me understand the business side of things. So moved into IT, did IT for a number of years. And then I did IT compliance for about 5 years. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to move on. What's the next thing, right? And that's when InfoSec was starting to be a thing, right? Back in 2008, made a shift, made a lateral move, right? Sometimes when you change professions, change, things that you want to go into, it's okay to, take that lateral scoot over. And then really started to kind of explore different roles within InfoSec that later became known as cybersecurity, right? Did you lose me?
I did. Are you back? Yeah, I think you're fine. I'll check with chat. You're back now. You were talking about InfoSec and how it changed into cybersecurity. Yep.
So, did various roles. I got involved in a special major incident project, and then from that went into security awareness and did that for a number of years, and really kind of found, I really enjoyed that, right? Because I have that business background, right? To understand user perspective. We were really starting to understand user behavior then, which it eventually kind of has shifted into, and now we call it human risk, right? It keeps evolving. And then, went and did that at Schwab from that last place. And then the last little bit that I was there went into our incident commander role. And that's what really, I had always kind of, because of that major incident project that I was on, kind of always stay connected with the security operations team, right? And then being able to then help with security incident. Then I spent 5 years at Cofense, and got to learn the vendor side of things, right? But it helped them as an organization, right, to have that person that could help them understand what it's like to be an enterprise, right? So giving them that customer perspective.
Mm.
And then my boss decided to retire that I was reporting to at the time. I was reporting to the co-founder and CTO. And so I'm like, okay, can I be the CISO then?
Yeah,
So then that
that's
last year
awesome.
kind of took on that CISO role. And sometimes you just got to ask,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
then, and then it was like, what did I just do? Right. And it was that little bit of a posture. And then I just had to keep reminding myself, nope, I've done architecture, I've done compliance, I've done I've done all the different things, right? I can do this, right? I have a team behind me that can, help support that. So, and then now I'm here. I am part of our XForce team, which I know, XForce has a really good reputation within the industry. We report up into our consulting services within IBM, and we have a new leader, and he understands the value of what that means in the marketplace, right? So, so what we do in the cyber range, so we're one of 4 services that we have within XForce, is we work with executives. Like a CISO will come in and bring their whole C-suite in, sometimes maybe even their board of directors, to go through an immersive experience of an incident. So compact in a 4-hour time frame, which you would, spend probably weeks. And it's more than a tabletop, right? Because we have live injections, right? We have the phone ringing, we have people delivering, hey, we have this, like all these different things, right? We want it to be as real, and it really does kind of lift the curtain to the cyber team for the executives to really understand, oh, that's what you do all day back there.
Yeah.
And I have a client coming in tomorrow, and she's a little nervous, right? And it's because she really wants her team to understand that the value that her team brings to them, right, and helps secure the organization. So yeah.
Yeah, so let's pivot on that really quick because I want to dive into 2 factors of it. I want to talk about the incident management and risk management portion that you teach and like going through that, but even more importantly, like pivot into something you were just talking about with the woman that that has leadership coming in and a little nervous because she needs to communicate what the executives are paying for. And last week I gave a talk at the Wild West Hacking Fest, Black Hills Information Security, and one of the things that I brought up was that executives view cybersecurity as a cost center. They don't see it as a strategic objective. Why? What's your thoughts on that? Why? Like, what can we do to get them to realize and they see it. I personally think it's because, well, we don't have a breach. So what are you guys really doing?
Right. I think you have to find ways that you can find ways to have metrics around cost avoidance. Like I worked in a manufacturing organization for 12 years, right? There was always the safety measure, cost avoidance. Like that was a big thing that we tracked in the manufacturing industry is avoid, like, because of your safety measures and things that you do around, protecting human life, that you are avoiding things happening. So how can we do that in the cyber realm of things, right? Like, because we didn't have a breach. And that's where I always, whenever I see a major incident happen, right, I'm following that along in the news because I want to, lessons learned can happen from watching somebody else suffer, right, and go through that because there's so much that we can learn from that, right? And I give those examples and I talk about that too when I'm facilitating, right? I want them to have a discussion. I'm not there to talk to them. I want them to kind of talk about their processes. How would if this was really happening right now, what would you be doing, right? Like who's stepping up, because they're playing their actual roles. They're not like make believe, right? That's like, okay, I have a team behind me. My team is calling me now and they're escalating that, we're getting all these calls about MFA, right? So looking at all of those other incidents that happen, right? We saw the scattered spider, right? We keep seeing little bubbles of it. So now what are you doing to look at your help desk procedures, right? How are you adjusting for that? I had talked to a CISO back in January. He's like, oh my gosh, we were hit by that thing and we had outsourced our help desk. And so we immediately brought it all back in-house. How can you do that, right? That takes a lot, right? And then for somebody if somebody needed a password reset, they literally had to physically go to the office to do that, right? So, in those moments we go extreme, and then we have to figure out, okay, how can we adjust for this, right? And so that's why
Yeah.
it's really good to watch what's happening with these, read, follow the stories, read along, understand what's happening. If there's somebody in that industry, ISAC, right, that you can kind of get some inside scoop, things that aren't public, right, to understand, okay, what are some of the things that they saw, right, and how can I look at my own processes to see, okay, is it a process problem? Is there a technology problem? Are there things that I need to adjust? So if that did try and hit my organization, how can I alert on it, find it, detect it, right, those things, and then
Yeah.
assure our C-suite, right, that this is what we're doing, right, brief them on that.
And you kind of touched on this too. It's like showing them, being able to show them the impact that they're having before a breach occurs. And one of the things that I had a meeting with Gardner today, and we were talking about a few different things, and I had some questions for her because I love when people get to, and I'll ask you this too, because you get the experience of working with various companies with major incidents. So you have a lot of data. And one thing she told me when I was asking her these questions about how to better communicate with leadership and what a metrics program should look like, it was kind of reassuring because she's told me one of the key challenges that she sees with CISOs is that they have a hard time figuring out as part of their cybersecurity metrics program what metrics matter. What are your thoughts? Like, because you've got end of life. Some companies it's a security scorecard. Some it could be like vulnerability data. What's important to these executives, and what would you think would be maybe maybe two different metrics that you would make sure that you're communicating to the executive leadership to show the impact of cybersecurity?
Wow, that's tough.
I know it's a tough one. Yeah, it is.
Right? Like,
Because
yeah,
you can't
that's
do too much information. You have to like figure out what is going to be, because if you give like 5 different metrics point, it's again over here. So what would be like 1 or 2 things? I know it's a challenge. I think that's why it's so hard for CISOs to figure out.
That's another thing that I love research reports, and I love research reports that are based on data, right? Like,
Facts,
give me one
data.
that's based on a survey. I want to know what's the data. So we just published our cost of a data breach in end of July. I've always loved that report even before I came here, right? Because we actually survey over 600 companies that actually had a breach, 3,500 executives in C-suites, right? That we actually talked to and had conversations about this with Panama Institute. And it's always the same things, right? It's the basics. It's asset management, identity management, vulnerability management. And now there's this 4th leg that's kind of come to play is data management, right? We actually had a term in there called shadow data. And when you look at what are they after now? They're after that data, right? Because that's how they get that, they extort you for that money, right? That's what they ultimately want. And I just saw a tweet that somebody had earlier today that said, they don't even waste their time encrypting anything now or taking down machines, right? They're just stealing that data and extorting you for that, right? So I don't know if you can just like find those 4 pillars, right? But you have to find ways that the business understands what that impact is to them, right? Yeah.
And sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes it's delivering and asking them, do you find value in this? Because if they're like, well, no, because I don't know what this means, then you either restructure the story or find a different metrics that would be able to tell them the story in their terms, because maybe they don't understand cybersecurity and they're not technical. And it's maybe there's an education piece that goes with it too.
Right. Well, and also, so one of the things that we talk about is crisis management, right? And then evaluating, now that we have this SEC requirement, like how do we quantify that risk, right? And part of what we talk about in here is allowing the business leaders to understand that they own the risk. Can we take that system down? It's not the securities team to like make all the decisions during the incident, right? Like everyone plays a role, and everyone understands the impact of each of their systems. Is it customer facing? Is it revenue generating? Quantify that, right? And so those are the things that you have to kind of get your arms around.
Owners, service owners, yeah, having people own part of the process is so important. So incident management, pivoting a little bit, going back to something you were talking about as far as like you work with a lot of companies, and I love being able to ask people questions when they have repetitive experience in a certain area, because you see the gaps, you see some of the shortfalls, because you see it so often. So this is your like, this is what you do. You work with organizations and you help them to prepare for major incidents. It's a high stake game. It sounds very stressful with all the phone ringing. I know I did similar things in the military, and they do it on purpose to make it really, really stressful on them.
Right, because we think differently in that moment, right?
Yes. Under stress, you're like,
yeah.
you start to freak out. And so you're teaching them how to like be calm under these situations, which is phenomenal.
Right.
When you've worked with these organizations, I'm assuming that there's probably a prep phase before you just jump right in, or you jump in and let's say you get it going, and then at the end you do a retrospective with them, however the process is. I'm curious though, with the organizations that you work with, as much information that you can provide us, what have been the biggest gaps, number one gap that you see repetitively within each of these organizations around their crisis management? Or is there one? I would think there would be something that you see repetitively. Yeah.
There is a theme, right? And the number one thing that we see over and over again, communication, right? People work in silos, and they realize that they need to learn to communicate either in their language or when things are like when to communicate. And that's what we practice, right? Like, oh, this thing is happening. Like I need to tell somebody, I need to let the team know. Having those discussions of, are we in a crisis? Are we not in a crisis? Right. That's usually the most common aha moment that we have at the end is communication. The other thing that comes up is we had one client in when I first started, was he realized that he needed to have more empathy for what the front line is dealing with, right? Because they're fielding those customer calls, and they're trying to get answers, but they're dealing with customers, right? So having empathy for that person that is also under stress, that stressful moment too, right? Having those, probably the biggest thing that I've noticed in the last few is starting to realize that third-party risk. They need to spend more time on that. How do they do something to engage their third parties? I actually saw I've been doing this Diligent Institute risk management certification, and there was an interesting, I actually took a picture of, because I'm like, okay, this is a really interesting stat. Now I got to find it. There was over the average company shares their data with over 583 third parties. Now, imagine if any of those were. Are you there?
I think we're losing you again. Come back. Okay, you're back. So you were right when you were giving the stats, you went away. So you were saying that organizations shared this amount of money, this amount of data with third parties. What was it? I can't.
583 third parties.
Oh my gosh, that's on average.
That's the average company share. And that's what, Fortune 1000s using tens of thousands of external vendors, right?
Oh my God,
right? So no wonder it's hard to keep track of where your data is. And now one of them has had a breach, and now what's the downstream of that? And then we've even heard of fourth party, right? That third party using an outsourced source, right? So that's been a lot of conversations with the last few that I've seen in here, right? Is, oh, we use a lot of third parties. What happens when they have something happen, and how do we practice that with them, right? Like, what they notify. I mean, we don't even need to mention CrowdStrike. I think it kind of woke everyone up when that happened, right? So like,
CrowdStrike was definitely, I think that actually helped leaders to see how like cybersecurity can better support them, because that wasn't even an actual breach, but think if it was, oh my gosh. We won't dive into the CrowdStrike. I feel like that's been beaten down. A lot of people are saying hi. Shout out to ACAT. Thank you for joining.
Your cat keeps walking behind you. So I was like, oh, does she have an name?
He is hanging out.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Ben said, what happened to CrowdStrike? Just kidding.
Right.
Amish runaway. It's so glad that you're here. He or she, you have a man and a woman in the photo, so not entirely sure, but congratulations on winning. I think you won the GRC, one of the courses, I think Security Plus. I don't remember the ACI learning course though. You got
Nice.
one of those. Yeah, we were doing a coupon giveaway like a couple weeks ago. All right, so we have a couple questions in chat. I will start with, this was kind of back when you were talking, I think, around your transitioning of, you were like, hey, pick me, CISO, and you've really gone into a lot of stretch roles. So Ben asked you a question around, how do you transition to a job that's challenging you? I've been in a cyber coordinator position recently. It's not challenging and I need that, or boredom strikes. What would you recommend to him?
I feel that, right? I tend to get to that way too, right? That's why even when I was in accounting all those years, like every couple of years, I was moving on to something else, right? Because you kind of perfect it, and then you're like, okay, I've done this, right? Have found that the easiest way to make those transitions is in the organization that you exist, right? Because
Yeah.
you know your work ethic, you have a reputation there, right? When I was at Schwab, we allowed shadowing, right? So there would be times where we would let somebody come in and shadow somebody in a role, right? So they can kind of get a feel for that, right? And just networking, right? Getting to know people that are connected to people in those departments, right? Kind of just like learning what they do, right? And seeing how can you volunteer for something, or just kind of getting to know people. Like if anybody goes back to the lunchroom anymore, I don't know. Does that still happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Sometimes we have a
finding,
lunchroom. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going back to
It's
the office now.
networking. It is all
Right.
about, I think that's 100%. Like, if, I guess it depends, but if you want to stay at your company, because you
Yeah.
didn't specify that. So yeah,
And
if you're wanting to
sometimes,
stay at
like,
your company,
even if you do want, like, even if you're not happy there, but give it a little bit of a year or two, right? To
yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
okay, fine, I'm gonna put up with it another year so I can get that on my resume to prove that I can
Yeah.
do that. And
Yeah.
then start looking, right? Like, and
Yep.
then take that with you, or go to little
Yeah.
meetups like we met up at, or right, like, or a B-sides,
Yeah.
or any of those kind of different places that you can kind of connect with people.
Yeah, I'm doing a networking event, a local one in North Carolina on Thursday, and I've actually invited a couple of people there, and I'm going to be doing, they don't know this. If they're watching, they're going to know this if they know who they are. But I want to
Yeah.
do a soft interview on them for a position that I have open. And
Yeah.
I want it, but I want them to be in a casual environment. I want to see them and so people don't realize that sometimes people are at these like meetups, networking events, scouting. And so
Yeah.
being prepared, going there, talking to the leaders that you know there, and then don't be afraid to let them know, hey, I'm really exploring new opportunities, and explain why you're exploring those opportunities, that you want to be more challenged. Because if you just say, I'm looking for a new job, that can kind of appear that you're kind of jumping around, because this industry has those people.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and it doesn't look
Right.
good. So yeah, be very specific. And Ben, if you have any other questions on that, absolutely reach out. Okay, I've got Space Taco up in here, has a question. And I think this was around when we were talking about the different programs and everything, and we had brought up some things around cybersecurity awareness. So she was asking, what is your favorite part about cybersecurity awareness?
Mhm.
Uh-oh, I think you're frozen. You know, you're back.
I'm here.
Yeah, you're here.
I'm back. Um, okay. So favorite part about cybersecurity awareness.
Or do you
That
have a favorite part, or do you just hate it?
no, I actually really liked it. And and that is something that I actually last week it kind of hit me that sometimes I tend to hold on to a piece of what I like because I like it so much and maybe stay in that a little bit too long. I actually had a leader tell my director that the only person standing in Tanya's way is Tanya, right? And so
Yeah,
sometimes I kind of hang out in a role for a little bit just because of maybe things going on in personal life, right? That kind of like, yeah, I know, but I'm happy here, right? And I'm okay if I don't want to climb the ladder right now, right? But
yeah,
I really enjoyed awareness because I loved being able to just um, share. Like it takes only like a little, like you can give somebody like one tip, like freeze your credit. And then today I learned from Teresa Payton, set a fraud alert. Like it's another step beyond just freezing your credit, right? So and I spoke at a conference on Sunday for the National Limo Association. Who knew there was one?
Okay.
But just giving them simple steps, like not only for themselves, but to protect their small business, right? They're one of gobs of small businesses that run our country, right? And giving them little steps that they can do, and like they eat that up, right? So
Yeah.
it's people, all you have to say is like, I'll be sitting in a restaurant, right? What do you do? Cybersecurity, right? And then it's like they're telling you their story about their phishing email that they they got trapped in, or their scam, or there's always something, right? And it starts a conversation.
Agreed. Okay. So pivoting on that topic, cybersecurity awareness programs, you have been a leader yourself in phishing awareness and training programs. What have you found in your journey to be the most effective strategy for changing the behavior around, say, like phishing threats? We literally, this has been, and I imagine this is the same in a lot of organizations in the corporate sector, but I think there's a lot of weight in phishing campaigns that are done internally. And then it's like, then you have all these repeat offenders because people don't want to take it seriously. So how have you found like to be really effective to change the culture in the organization?
So making it relatable, making them understand how it is
Mm,
real. And also part of that, part of what I did at Cofence was helping customers build their programs. And um, I could not stress enough that you need to use templates that are based on real fish, not some made up thing that's going to get caught in your spam filter, right? Because then that just turns off your users, right? And it makes them just, really hate your program. And your phishing training program, right? It's probably the most visible thing out of your whole entire security program and a whole, right, across the organization, right? So if you can get them to not hate you for that, right, then. And what I
yeah.
found is that then I started having departments invite me to speak at their team meetings, right? To be able to kind of make it to their group, right? Like going to talk to the accounting group and helping them understand that, business email compromise, it is, it's a process issue, not an email problem, right? So how do you adjust for that, and just making it real for them.
Yeah.
Right. And then
Yep.
also at the same time, talking to my security analysts sitting in the SOC that want to say, oh, that user. And I'm like, do you know
Mm.
how to write a journal entry or write a log agreement, right? They don't know your job. You don't know their job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
expect
Yep.
them to know their job, right? So, and making it easy for them to report that, right? And yeah.
I love that. And I think some of the things that are getting rolled out now, Alyssa Knight, who's now moved out of cybersecurity and completely into Hollywood and production, I think she
Yeah.
did a great job with using short movies, theatrical, like
Yeah.
Hollywood style, Hollywood level movies, because then you watch these things and you're like, wow, this can really happen. I do. On the other end of that, though, I think it could almost be too much Hollywood because we
Mm,
see these hacker movies and sometimes you're like, that again, not going to happen. So I think you're to the point. I think there's a good medium from what we
yeah.
have where we're going to make it more relatable, make it more impactful for individuals to understand. So, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, Amish right away. I know. I love her too. I love her too. I think
Okay.
you're talking about Alyssa.
Yeah, I do want to give one little plug to National Cybersecurity Alliance, because we have the best website is Stay Safe Online. But there is a video series that we have there called Cubicle with a K, and it's their fun little short little videos that you can use, and they're free, right? So you can put them in your own platform. So even if you don't have a budget to run your program, there's so many resources. But I will give a shout out to those because they are funny and humorous, right? And if you can find a way that makes it enjoyable, that your users are actually going to watch the thing that you need them to watch, right? And not have to click through a PowerPoint.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Around the education piece, around specifically like cybersecurity education, we've got a question from Hey. Hopefully I said that right. Good to see you again. I think you're speaking at the Simply CyberCon. So
Mhm.
happy to have you joining us. And he's asking if this is a valid question for this, I think, chat we're having right now. So
Mhm.
his town's mayor office and the police chief are asking him to conduct a seminar series for them, what would be some topic relevant to the audience? I did a follow-up question to ask him if this was cybersecurity, and he said they want some education relevant to their job description. And then Tom had thrown out there, he said mobile forensics, the police have to deal with that all the time. Yeah. So I think this is around like their job descriptions, what they have to deal with, what would be some relevant topics for them to consider specifically related to their day-to-days. I think deepfakes is like, and my first thing I thought about is like deepfakes, disinformation, like, yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah. And again, I would point you to the Stay Safe Online website. We have actually some pre-canned content that you can use to deliver, right? So there's even some for you to go talk to your, retirement village, right? And talk to seniors, right? About how they should be safe online, that they're a target for scams, how you can talk to your teens, how you can talk to in general, right? Audience. When it comes to job roles like that, that's all over the board, right? So it just kind of depends on what is their function and how can you, and especially like we have application security, right? So that's another aspect that, that is a big topic that organizations are making sure their developers are trained on how to do secure development. That could be, that's a lot of, that's a big question. So probably breaking it down by different functions and then understanding what are the threats that are targeting them to make it relatable.
Yeah, the mayor's office, I mean, I'm not the best at remembering when the cycle, because like the Senate cycle is different from congressional cycle and so forth. So I would want to know, are they in the cycle right now, the voting cycle? And if so, there's going to be disinformation going on out there. There'll be specifically BEC compromises or targeted BECs, probably to the mayor's office is my first thought. And then the police chief, you may want to just research what are current targeted attacks on police officers and see what that looks like too. Yeah.
And also to that point, another good resource is CISO, right? CISO.gov, right? They have, especially if it's election related, right? They have a whole bunch of content out there for that as well. So there's some really good FBI, right? Bring the FBI in to do a talk for you, right? To kind of just help educate, your team. They're always willing to do that. Even CISO will come in and do a talk to your internal teams if you have something relevant that you want them to highlight.
Yeah, and you may even CISO, if you have somebody that is connected to the InfoGuard world, you may contact them and ask them if they could maybe look for some research articles for cyber threat intel. And part of this series I would give is maybe tell the story of like, here's the cyber threat intel landscape of what is being targeted within your spaces. And then these are some things that I would recommend that you do so that you could tie that piece into it as well.
That's a good idea.
All about the actionable intel. You're welcome. Thank you for the question. I think there was another question that came in. Yeah. So Space Taco had another one for you. So the gamified learning, I view what you're doing as gamified learning with XForce Cyber Range in a way, because it's not, and when I think of gamified, I think it's not really real life, but you're still practicing it. But I guess it could be different because in the military, we gamified everything, but I realized out in the civilians world, like gamifying includes like hack the box or certain ways to make things fun where you play video games, but you're actually like hacking things. They have all of that. So I don't know what your thoughts are as far as gamified learning.
Yeah, we do have one aspect. That's a good reminder that we have one aspect that is for our cyber war games. So it's for the technical side of the house, right? It's to let them practice, when they see alerts and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like an organized capture the flag within a certain time period, right? Sometimes we'll couple those together with a business response, right? So now that technical team has found this threat, now they got to escalate it. They got to practice talking to the business leaders, right? Like, okay, now we need to escalate this up, let them know what's happening. So yeah, gamification, it's kind of gone up and down, right? Because it's fun when you start and then it's like, oh, this is a lot of overhead to maintain, right? Like how long do you let it go on for? Do you just do a short amount of time, right? There's different variations that you can go, and like to continue it over, through a long period is really a lot. Like there's a lot to maintain that. Like back when I was starting awareness and that was starting to pick up, it's like, okay, this is cool, but how do you, you get badges, but then how do you
Yeah.
maintain that? And then it kind of just has died out because I think people started to realize like, oh, this is a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
And the additional context too, because when I saw this, I was thinking kind of what you do in your realm, but the additional context is around security awareness. And I know I like it. I think the
Yeah.
gamification approach around security awareness is way more effective than
Yeah.
just watching and clicking through videos. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I've
Yeah.
seen like, being at when I was at Cofence, right. And every October, I don't miss doing 30 webinars this month. But I would, be a part of, I'd be a guest speaker to some of those organizations and hear about what they were doing, right? They were doing a fishing contest, right? Or they would do different things during the month of October just to kind of make it fun and it's memorable, right?
Yeah.
Probably the most memorable thing we do in our range experience is having that first phone call come in and they're startled by it, right? And then as it starts to evolve, then they're like, oh crap, the phone's ringing for me too. And then we end it with a live interview, pulling somebody from one of their seats and saying, okay, we're going to take you back and you're going to now have to go in front of the reporter. And that's memorable too. So, right, just like anything that you can make fun and memorable, that's going to stick.
Yep.
And positive, right?
Yeah. And then at their level, I agree. We got one more from Amish Runaway. Tonia, what is one thing on repeat on your lips on your daily basis? For security lens, what is that?
Credentials, right? Like, okay, so in our cost of a data breach, one of the stats that I constantly have been using now is 292 days was the average time it took for them to identify that a compromised credential. So we're at about we're almost at day 270 something-ish, right? I need to calculate that for my talk tomorrow. So since January 1st, they're still in your environment and you haven't found them. What have they found, right? They get to know your environment far better than you do. So credential phishing credentials. We, in our threat index report that we published in February, info stealers was up by 266%, right? They're scraping those browser cookies, all the ways that they can get credentials, right? That's their way in. That's how they're in your environment.
Yeah.
And MFA, right? And then to offset that, right? MFA.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, let's pivot into some, what was I going to talk to you about? Oh, all right. So cyber trends and challenges. I love talking about this because especially like, I feel like you're going to have a good answer for this, but because of where you're sitting and what you do. But cybersecurity landscape, as we know, as practitioners in this space, it is always evolving. It's a cat and mouse game all the time. And we have innovation, and with innovation comes emerging threats. What great things come, you're going to have bad things follow. AI is a great example of that. We're seeing now proliferation of using AI and pushing out disinformation campaigns. What are some key trends that you've witnessed on your end that you think security leaders need to be paying attention to maybe right now and they're not? Maybe they've got their head in the sand, or maybe they're just like, oh, that's going to be a while down the road. I don't need to worry about that right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't say shadow data enough, but I think one of the other newer things that we're starting to see, and we've seen some incidents actually happen from, is deepfakes, right? They are getting really good at those graphic deepfakes, right? And we actually just started offering that as part of one of our injects, is having a deepfake inject. But that, and there are actually some technologies out there. It's relevant. There is a software component that we've partnered with that is helping you to detect deepfakes in your environment, right? So they're hard. But I went to a talk. I talked at a conference in Phoenix a couple of weeks ago, and they had a former FBI agent that was he was the keynote, right? And he said when he gets on a Zoom call, he makes sure everybody like raises her hand or lifts a pen, right? Because AI hasn't been able to do that. I had one other person tell me that when she gets a call that she coughs, she was told to cough into it, because then if it's an AI or a bot, right, that it's not in their script, right? So if you cough, you kind of disrupt their script, right? So there's just little things that we got to learn. How do we, until they program for those things, right? Like, how do we do? I think that those are scary things, right? But we see the benefit of AI, right? Again, cost of data breach, we saw when organizations were using AI automation in their security programs, they were more efficient. They were, detection was quicker, right? They detected a threat quicker than those that didn't. So there are positives to it, but then it's the balance, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Always. I love that. Great tips. Now, we got kind of a curveball here. I got to ask it because this has been the hot thing that has come out is the Meta glasses. So we've got the Meta glasses. You're tracking the Meta glasses, right? They're hilarious.
I've seen snippets of it. Like, unfortunately, my boys are in their 20s now, so I don't have them around to like tell me what the latest trend, like what's
it's basically a computer in the lens, and it's pitched, obviously don't have a pair yet, but it's pitched as if you will be able to answer phone calls, watch movies, check out memes, do all of the things in your glasses, but it won't impede your peripheral sight. Like, it's fantastic. It connects to Wi-Fi, does all these things, has upload, download. It's like, I think of it like Apple Watch on your face kind of a thing, like that technology.
So I saw one really encouraging use of it, and it was somebody who was deaf who had that on there, and now she was able to understand what somebody was saying. Like, it made me like, oh my gosh, that's such a positive thing, right? But that's scary because like even if I'm walking down the street and I see somebody taking a photo, I'm like stepping aside, like I don't want you to photo me, right? Like I don't know, and you don't know that until we all know. I mean,
that's so good point.
I'll admit my youngest had a pair of Google Glasses back in the day. So I think these are kind of the same thing. I don't know. And then what do you do in the workplace, right? Do you even like privacy? Do you let them like now, right? We don't like, how do you detect? You can't detect those are happening right now. Recording things that are happening on their work screens, right?
Oh, that's scary when you think about, the secret clearance rooms. Mom is even talking about, like, you can cook and then pull up a restaurant recipe or a recipe. I don't think he meant restaurant, but a recipe without it blocking your view. And because there's like techniques too, where you can go like this and you take pictures. And so you could just be like doing that and like double tap left is record or right is a photo. And I think privacy is going to be impacted by that. I think like anything, when it first comes out, it's not going to be secure by design. CISO. I love that. So there's going to be a lot of vulnerabilities. And I think adversaries are going to take advantage of that. And then they're going to be able to get information off of people again, because they're going to just be walking around with these unsecure devices. Well, they'll probably be secure, but they'll be easily probably breached because the security measures probably haven't been battle tested in a way. Hand gesture.
I'm perplexed by that. I don't know.
It's going to be a wild time. Like the thing is too, like this technology, we're talking about this, but it's like AI, it's like quantum computing, all these things and these encryption measures that they've rolled out for quantum computing for like what they think quantum computing is going to do. But the problem is we don't usually know what it's going to do until it happens. Like we don't know the negative impacts this technology could have until it's actually leveraged in a negative capacity. We've always, human behavior's just always been like that. Yeah. I don't know what the operating system is on the Meta glasses. Not a clue. Tom, if you know, you can drop that in there for us and let us know. So
I tend to stay away from some of those things. They're too trendy, right? I'm like, I'm going to wait and let this evolve before I say anything, or I want to see some research before I can get on board with it or understand how do we fight against, how do we defend against it or detect it, right? Threat actors are always evolving. And actually, I will take this back. So when it comes to AI specifically, so I was drawn to an article that was about Google ads or something. Buried in the middle of it said the phishing page was created by AI, and I'm like, how do you even know? And then it had a screenshot of the header of the web page, and it said it was created by an AI. Like, I'm like, what? Right? Like,
you don't even want to spend your time, right?
No. right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Our
I don't
world is
know.
going to be run by AI in the next, like,
I
probably
know. Oh,
15,
yeah.
20 years.
So
Mhm.
right, so I live in Phoenix, right? Yes, I live in DC, but I still have my place in Phoenix because that is where I will retire. Um, we have Waymos there all over the place, and where I live at, they're always just driving through the neighborhoods, right? I'm like, I don't drive by them. And then every once in a while there'll be an event downtown Phoenix, and they're all kind of like stuck
Yeah,
together
yeah.
because they like can't figure their way out, right? Like, ah,
I can't wait till they get just everything self-drives and you get where you can rent those little tiny airplanes because they have them in New York and they're
oh yeah,
like piloted for you. Like, I'm all for it. I just don't,
right?
like you. I just don't want to be for part of the first trend because
No.
they're gonna run into buildings. They're gonna mistake a
Yeah.
cat for like a kid for a cat, and
Yeah,
it's
no,
just
I had one pulling out of a Starbucks. I was at a left turn lane and it was like coming across and it was waiting for traffic to move, but I'm like, if somebody was in that car, they would not do that move,
no,
right? Like
no,
you wouldn't just sit there across 3 lanes of oncoming traffic waiting
no,
for the left turn lane to
no,
move.
no.
Right. So
Yeah.
anyways,
That's
like
yeah, it's
gives
gonna be
me
a lot of
anxiety.
fun. They're all looking up. Thanks, Tom, for looking it up. Somebody just said Android open source project and Horizon Open OS powers Meta broader ecosystem. Wow, thank you, Amish Runway. All right, so we've got less than 10 minutes. I want to do kind of a quick look ahead with you and then give it over to you for final thoughts. So, like, looking ahead at your current position or personal goals that you have in cybersecurity, are there any things that you're working on right now that you're excited to share that it could be getting rolled out in 2025?
Me personally, no. Like I just
Yeah.
yeah, right. Like we kind of facilitated. We use 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to work with the client to
Yep.
storyboard what their story is going to look like and deliver that, and then we do some fun events, open house kind of events, so people can
How
kind of get a
fun.
tease of what it
Yep.
is. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, but nothing myself personally. Like I even like I've gotten back to a good space where I'm like, okay, I should write a CFP, right? I submit a talk for some conference coming up, right? Like
Yeah, it's
getting
a lot of work though. I feel you.
right. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what do I have to talk about? Like I've lost my creative juices. Like
It's
I saw your little post about writing your book. So like, okay, write your book, right?
Yeah, getting the right brain going because it's all left
Yeah,
brain in our field. Well, you do have some new positions opening up at your company, and if you
I
want to share
do.
that with the viewers and talk
I
to them
do.
about like, the roles and how they could reach out to you if they're interested in it.
Yes, please. So
Yeah.
because we're in DC, we opened up our cyber range in DC at the beginning of March. So we are seeing lots of agencies, lots of country delegations come through here. So we're actually creating a little bit of a XForce Red. So some of those positions will get posted in the next couple weeks. So looking for people that can help us in the federal space aspect of XForce, right? Using our brand to still
Yeah.
do what we can on in that space.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So reach out to you. Do they need to have a clearance?
That is something we actually our next range facilitator will need to have a clearance, right?
Okay.
Because we do
Yeah.
have some things ahead of us, right? Where we want to be able to serve
Mhm.
our agencies, and sometimes that's a requirement, right? To be able to have that clearance because they're going to be talking about real life situations, right? So we
Yeah.
need them to be able to accommodate being
Yep.
there for that.
Like the clearance, is it secret or top secret?
That part I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar enough with
It's
all of
probably
that.
a secret, and then they'll sponsor a top secret is what I would think it probably
However
is.
that works, yeah, that's not my forte, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
look
yeah,
for that.
yeah.
They'll be on the expo or on the IBM careers page. In the next week or so, we're hoping to get some of those posted.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. And then final thoughts before we wrap it up. I want to pass it over to you for a couple of minutes to just share like final thoughts. And if you have anything that's coming up, maybe a conference or an event, or like you were talking about where people can come in and learn more about XForce and what you all do, like sharing that, and then how people can connect with you, if it's LinkedIn or an email.
Am I still here?
You just came back.
Okay. We're almost done. We made it through
We
most of this
did. We
way.
did.
So, a final thought prepare your life. Am I here?
Hold on. No, I think you're through whatever it was. You're in DC. There's like things flying over and they mess with Wi-Fi all the time. So yeah, final thoughts. Start again.
All right. Have that conversation with your executives, right? The only way to prepare them is to go through something like that we have here, right? Yeah. And so I do want to throw out that we are having what we call our multi-client event, where we let you come in. We give you a little bit of a tease, like an hour and a half event where you get to sample what we go through. When we customize it for you, it's 3 to 4 hours. November 19th here in our DC range, and then December 9th if you're near Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're doing another event there. Unfortunately, we don't have anything on our IBM site that I can direct you to, but if you email cyberrange, all one word, at ibm.com, we can get you signed up and any information coming up in the future, because we will offer these every other month. We're trying to host an event so that we can get people through the doors to kind of just get an idea of what it is that this looks like.
Cyberrange at ibm.com.
Yes.
Boom. Got it. Just send it to the chat. And then Amish Runway. We talked about XForce at the very beginning, so check that out. And then, so Ambe lives in the DMV. Maybe you guys can meet. I would say, Ambe, reach out to Tonia on LinkedIn, connect with her there if you're okay with that, for them reaching out to you that way. So you guys can connect. Cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you again for being a guest on the show. The community loves you. I, of course, love you. I think we had some great conversations today, so I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, and good luck on your hike. I'm so excited to hear how that goes for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, a lot going on, but I'm very, very grateful and excited for it. So awesome. Have a great night.
Thanks. You too.
Bye. That was amazing. Always a repeat offender. She'll probably be back next year. If you are curious about XForce, go check it out online. You guys are amazing. Seriously, I can't say this enough. Like, if you guys weren't here, I wouldn't be doing this. So I'm so, so, so grateful for the community support, all my repeat offenders up in here, and some new people. Hashtag team Simply Cyber, always coming in force and making me feel so good. You guys are amazing. If you did miss it when I kicked it off at the beginning, there is some slight changes to the show. I'm doing a mini series. My workload's gotten a little heavy, and I want to make sure that I'm loving what I'm putting out. I'm starting to feel a little saturated with work, and I've made the intentional decision that I'm only going to do 1, maybe 2 more after this. And I'm not going to do any more for season 1 starting into November. And instead, I'm just going to focus on giving back to myself, getting through quarter 4, enjoying the holidays. I am planning to kick off season 2 in probably January or February timeframe. It'll probably be another mini series because I'm all about quality versus quantity. I'm loving these engagements. The feedback I'm getting from you all is amazing. So keep telling me if you want to talk about something different. If you have an executive guest that you want me to bring on the show, absolutely recommend them. Again, you guys are amazing. And I hope you all have an amazing evening. I'm signing out. Bye.